Welcome to Unscripted, a podcast with no script by design. We're not following a plan, and that's exactly the point. This show is about whatever's on the minds of your hosts, Larry Lannan and Duncan Giles. We'll dig into what's happening in the world, and just as importantly, what isn't making headlines this week. So with that, let's get started. The conversation could go anywhere because we go wherever the microphones take us. Here's Larry Lannan and Duncan Giles. I'm Lannan, he's Giles, and this is Lannan and Giles Unscripted. And today is September 5th in 2025. Duncan Giles has now got palm trees behind him. Good to have you back, Duncan.
Thanks. Yeah, wishful thinking. It was great to be on the lake. Very restful. We enjoyed it a whole lot, but now I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go back to the beach.
I'm not sure. I don't see a beach. It's almost like you've got water behind you, like you're in the middle of an island somewhere.
You never know with me. It also depends on what particular Zoom background there is out there that strikes my fancy a particular day.
Of course, last podcast, I had to let people know that you did not have a fake background. You actually were on the boat. So, and I assume you had no long-term effects of any like insect bites or anything you were attacked while you were talking that day.
Yeah, there was a yellow jacket or something of that nature. And I don't apologize for the surprise. I wanted to get your reaction too when we decided to do the podcast from the boat, just to get your honest reaction. Because that's where we spent a lot of our time on the lake. The folks that we rented from have a nice pontoon boat. And, we rented that for the time that we were up there as well. So just, being out in particular in this area of Lake Wawasee, it's called Johnson Bay. And this is an area that I was very familiar with, having had when I was little. I wouldn't say little, preteen. My folks had, I believe, one or two different places there. You can't recognize anything anymore because, as I said on the podcast, they destroy everything and build these huge, what can only be described as mansion second homes. So, there was one that we saw that was right next to the Eli Lilly compound. It had been for sale last year when we rented. It was still for sale this year. And it was funny, on the second day we were there, we drove past it and it said sale pending. And I'm like, I guess we're their good luck charm or something. But that one, we looked it up, and that was going for somewhere, it was listed for about 3.8 million.
My gosh. Oh my gosh.
And that was a lot of those houses. You just drive past them and it's like, these people can't have that big of families. I mean, are you expecting to have 10 or 20 people up there at a time?
Well, perhaps corporate events are trying to entertain their clients.
Yeah, that's the only thing that we could figure out. And my cousin, who has been up there for decades, my aunt and uncle had a place there forever, and then he stayed up there with his wife. They call it the 5-year plan because they build these magnificent houses, get all these boats, and then they're broken 5 years and they have to sell them.
Well, if you want to have a boat, be prepared to either hire people, spend money on that, or spend a lot of time of your own time on that. Now, Duncan, I want to talk about something that I think is interesting. And here's the thing that I have heard from other people, that social media sometimes can be your best friend and your worst enemy. And when I say it in this, it's in this regard. There's a bankruptcy attorney in Indianapolis who's tried to promote his bankruptcy practice through Facebook. He has been taken off of Facebook time and time again. He spent like $11,000 doing Facebook advertising, and they keep throwing him off of Facebook. Do you know why?
Hard telling.
His name, this is the name of the bankruptcy attorney, is Mark Zuckerberg.
I read something about that. Yep.
Spelled exactly like the last name of the founder of Facebook. So they just assumed that he was mimicking Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook founder, not Mark Zuckerberg, the bankruptcy attorney. He kept going. I mean, you ever had to deal with Facebook, Duncan? I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. It can be a nightmare.
it's impossible to communicate with these people in most cases. Well, Zuckerberg couldn't get their attention. So you know what he did, being an attorney? He filed a lawsuit. Boom, the next day. Oh, Mr. Zuckerberg, we'll get you back on. But it took the filing of a lawsuit and their lawyers to look at this to say, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. I don't know if you ever
Yeah.
seen this, Duncan. There's another thing that's kind of tied to this, and I haven't seen much about it in recent years, but at least it has been an issue. If your name happens to be McDonald and you own a business and you call it McDonald's, whatever, McDonald's, air conditioning repair or McDonald's auto repair, the McDonald's company will come after you for trademark infringement. They do this all the time. I never could quite figure out what was behind this. Why would they do this? Your name is McDonald. Should you not be able to name your own business after your own name? Well, not according to the hamburger joint. And a funny thing about that, Duncan, is that when Ray Kroc bought McDonald's, and he really the people forget that the only reason it's called McDonald's is because of the McDonald brothers who had the original restaurant in San Diego. And Ray Kroc, for some reason, just had it out for them. And the only reason he didn't like them was because they were not as ambitious as he obviously was. They just wanted their hamburger joint there in San Diego and had no ambitions to open any more stores or restaurants. And he always kind of held that against him. Actually, kind of went after them in an ugly way after he bought them out. And yet, after doing all that, if anybody dares to have the name McDonald tied to their business, Mr. Kroc, when he was there, and I assume his lawyers still today, say, you want to call it McDonald's? Good luck. See you in trademark court.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton. Excellent, excellent movie talking about how McDonald's was formed, things of that nature, and that it's actually, their value, the McDonald's Corporation value isn't from the restaurants, but from the land that they lease to the franchisees. And interesting story about Mr. Kroc. My dad, who was in the restaurant business, met with him. I want to say early to mid 70s, somewhere in that range, about possibly becoming a franchise owner. And my dad came back, and to my recollection, and this again is just my recollection, is that he said, well, McDonald's would make all the money. I wouldn't make jack squat for years. And I don't think he put it that politely. And I was a young kid at that time. But yeah, they drive very hard bargains. And the Ray Kroc legacy was, if you even associate with our name, then yeah, we are going to sue you because we very protective of that. And then going back to your earlier point on Facebook, trying to get a hold of a actual person on Facebook when your account's either been hacked or you have a clone account out there that you're trying to report and saying, no, I'm the real Duncan Giles, this person purporting to be me is not me, is practically impossible to do. You just can't find a real person. So I guess the only answer is to what Mr. Zuckerberg did and sue them. So,
We'll have to get you a good lawyer here, Duncan, if this happens to you. No, I have to say that everything you've told me about your dad, if he said that was a bad business deal to open a McDonald's restaurant, I'm sure it was a bad business deal. But you're right.
Well, you have to look at it because all the franchisees, I don't hear any franchisees complaining about not making money. And my dad could have some interesting theories. Basically, he always wanted to be in control. I think that was probably the bottom line. And as we both know, and everybody I'm sure knows, McDonald's is very rigid about exactly what you can serve, where the products come from, things of that nature. And you can't do anything innovative. You can't do any changes unless you're in an approved testing market phase type thing. So I think that also played a part in it as well, looking back now.
That's interesting because you're right. If you sign on to a very rigid type of operation like McDonald's, they control everything. I mean, and they do that so you have the predictability of knowing when you go to McDonald's you're going to get certain different things, and it's exactly the same as all. There are other franchises where you can get a lot, you can come negotiate or use different products, but you, some franchise operations say, okay, you signed on to this and you have to do it this way. You have no wiggle room around that. And some people just don't like that kind of thing. There was, who was it? John Oliver, who was one of the greatest shows on TV right now. If you have HBO and don't watch it, you're missing something. He did a whole segment once on Subway, and I won't get into it, but and his basic message was Subway can be a very good franchise. The problem is with Subway is that you don't really get like a territorial. Um, Somebody can open something up. You don't have a territory like you do in other places. Somebody can open up if they get mad at you, they'll just give a franchise to somebody across the street or next door. I mean, not quite that bad, but pretty close. So you really have to watch these franchise agreements. I'm not saying Subway's a bad deal. It may be very good for some people, but he was just kind of explaining how there were some franchisees that were unhappy about that. But I've never been in business for myself, so I wouldn't really know much about that.
It can be very interesting and frustrating if you have that type of situation. I mean, sometimes you take a look at a great example to me is Starbucks. It's like, okay, there's a Starbucks on this corner. Why does there need to be a Starbucks on that corner as well? I mean, people can walk 100 feet to get a Starbucks. They don't need to walk, oh, okay, well, this one's only 50 feet and I can go, or this one 50 feet. Yeah, if you get too much flooding the area with competition, and there are, Subway is the, up until I don't know, at least last year, as the last statistic I saw on it, was the fastest growing franchise out there. So yeah, like you said, basically, I don't know if they're trying to catch Dollar General and saying, okay, every time you look around, there's a new Dollar General popping up somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Are you going to do that with Subway as well?
Here's the thing that amazes me about Starbucks. I write a local news blog in Fishers, Indiana, suburb of Indianapolis, and maybe this is just part of, suburban type of thinking. But if there's a rumor that there might be a Starbucks going into a particular neighborhood, Duncan, you wouldn't believe how many people are. Is it true? Is there really going to be a Starbucks here? It's like, get a life. I mean, do you really want to, do you have to pay that much for coffee? Is that the way you run your life? I don't know. As you can tell,
it's almost like the cachet of having Starbucks versus, a coffee from home, God forbid, or, a Dunkin' Donuts. Well, I drink Starbucks. Now, a funny story is when I was negotiating for the term contract with NTEU the last time, and I was there for basically 2 weeks, and there was a Starbucks in our hotel. Now, I don't drink coffee, but they had breakfast sandwiches. By the end of those 2 weeks, they were like, hey, Duncan, do you want the usual? I mean, they would, they'd have a crowd of people and see me coming. Hey, Duncan, do you want the usual? Yeah, just give me a couple sandwiches, and I'd walk it over to the office where we had and start my day.
yeah, I'm not I haven't had much coffee to drink. It's a long story as to why, but I don't drink much coffee at all anymore. But you're right, their sandwiches are this food's very good. I would have no problem, doing that. Duncan, I do want to, how I have this thing for Guinness World Book Records. Well,
oh yeah, we know you have a fetish for that.
I've got another one for you, but a little background. I went to a Catholic school. I graduated 1965, all 8 grades. We didn't even have kindergarten, so it's the only reason I went to public school for kindergarten. But grades 1 through 8, I went to the same Catholic school on the northeast side of Indianapolis. Well, At that time, there were virtually no sports for the girls in public or private schools. I mean, girls' basketball was literally non-existent.
Mhm.
You might, if you had an interest in gymnastics or kind of niche sports, you might be able to do that. But as far as the kind of sports that might be available to girls generally, there was only one sport that the girls in my grade school played. Do you know what that sport was?
Kickball.
You got it. Kickball.
Kickball. That is my daughter Madison went to Catholic school all throughout her uh, high school because my ex-wife is converted to Catholicism. She wanted to do that, so we paid for that. Yeah, that is like a religion in and of itself for
Most
Catholic schoolgirls.
people who don't know, you play kickball on a flat surface like concrete or asphalt or something like that. They put it up like a baseball field, and you have a pitcher that rolls the ball on the ground, and you kick the ball, and it's kind of like baseball. You have bases, and you run around the bases and all that. My kickball team for the girls that I went to school with, they had one, and there was a whole league. The Catholics, there were a lot of,
Yeah.
there are actually more Catholic schools. There's still several of them in the Indianapolis area at that time. And we had one of the top kickball teams in the whole area, which was saying something because, as you mentioned, everybody had a kickball team because that was really the only way girls could get involved in sports. Well, that's the this is the here's the record that just happened. There's a group that trying to raise money for charity, so this is a good thing they were trying to do. It's called Men Opposing Sex Trafficking. That's also called MOST, M-O-S-T. They gathered 27 men and 13 women. They started a kickball game at 8 a.m. on Friday in Fairburn, Georgia, and played kickball for 52 consecutive hours. They have earned their right to be in the Guinness World Book of Records.
And I'm betting that there are some Catholic folks out there, in particular, who are raised on this, who are saying, you know what, we can beat 52 hours. We can get enough people together to beat 52 hours. Um, yeah, it's like I said, it was just a religion. It was very organized. The Catholic schools, the elementary schools, all played against each other. Oh yeah, it was huge in the summer and fall.
And we had certain girls that were the stars of the team. If they happened to be missing for some reason, it was like a school emergency.
How are we going to substitute for them? Where are we going to go? What's going to happen? Yeah, that can, or if the person wasn't the strongest kickball kicker or something of that nature, it's like, oh, please don't make that third out. Come on, do something. It's like, folks, it's not that serious. It isn't that big of a deal, but it was to them.
Yeah, going to Catholic school, I have so many stories, but there's one more I'll tell, not related to kickball, but I thought it was hilarious because the teachers were pretty strict with us. Not just the nuns, we had a few lay teachers too, but they were all pretty strict with us. And there was one young man who I did know his family, knew him a little bit, and he acted up in class and he got in trouble. So they had him stand, you had to go stand out in the hallway by yourself. That was the way you were punished. Well, he lived, I think, 2 or 3 blocks away from the school, so he was all by himself, nobody else around, so he just walked home. So they went back into the hallway, found out that they had a missing student. They had the priests and everybody they could find driving their cars all around the neighborhood looking for this kid who had just walked home. I mean,
Yeah,
that's where he was. And, his parents got home. He was there. They didn't even know there was anything wrong until the school reluctantly and sheepishly had to call and say that he was missing. And parents said, no, no, he's not. He's right here. It was just a hilarious story. And one of those little stories that could only happen in a Catholic school. In public schools, that probably would not happen.
yeah. My favorite Catholic school story is the principal of my daughter Madison's elementary school was a nun by Sister James Michael. And the sister was very feared by everyone. She always seemed to be very stern and all that. Well, me being me, I one day struck up a conversation with her. And she and I got along great. I could make her laugh, everything. And my daughter was like, "How did you do this? What is going on with you and Sister James Michael? I don't understand that." I said, "You got to understand one thing about Sister James Michael." And she goes, "What's that?" I said, "She is a huge Notre Dame football fan." Once I found that out and could talk Notre Dame football to her, I was good. Even though I was not a Catholic, I was still good.
You had to
So
find
yeah,
that
it's just funny how things work.
common denominator, that connection means everything, doesn't it, Doug? It
It
means
does.
whether you're dealing with a Catholic nun or you were involved in labor management negotiations, you got to find that way to connect and find a way to get to the solution in the end. I got another school story. I think this is from up in Canada, in Ontario province. Um, they were working on a school, and there were some people, the workers there, and they call them caretakers up there. There's a caretaker that was working in the building at a place called Stony Creek Orchard Secondary School in Canada. So there were some construction workers there. They ended up having to take down a wall in one of the bathrooms. Lo and behold, you know what they found?
Hopefully not a body.
No, they found a wallet that had been lost for 51 years.
That's a pretty old. I'm amazed it's still in condition.
I couldn't find out whether or not they actually found the person who lost it or if that person's even still alive, but or how old they were when they lost it. But somebody lost a wallet, reported it not stolen, but at least missing. 50, however many years it was, 51 years ago. And they actually found the wallet. So good news for somebody if they were in a position to find their wallet again. Of course, if there's any actual cash in there, it's worth a whole lot less now than it was 51 years ago.
Well, it might be, but it might be valuable. I mean, depending upon how old it is and what type of denominations or things of that nature, it might be a rare bill or something of that nature. But yeah, when you're in that building trade, it's funny that there's a lot of stuff that can be found behind walls where people either put inadvertently, lost, or they had hidden something. A previous owner had hidden something, didn't realize it, didn't remember it. It got plastered over or whatever, and then they find it decades later. There's a lot of stuff that happens along that line from what I hear from my folks that do that type of work.
Got to tell you a quick story, change the subject a bit. I worked in radio broadcasting for years, and I remember one story, and I'm going to tie it into something that just happened last night. I was with, he was a he was a grade school, elementary school principal, but he also did broadcasting on the side. And I was working in Columbus, Indiana. One of the Columbus high schools, I think it was Columbus East, was playing in New Albany or Floyd Central. Down there by the Ohio River. It's down in that area. It's a long trip, not quite as long from Columbus as it is from here to there, but it was still one of our longer trips. So we're down there, and the way it worked, we didn't have a lot of sophisticated technology. We hooked up through a telephone line connection, but it's only one way. We could talk to the station couldn't talk to us. That's just the way it worked. Well, they would have a junior varsity or JV game that would start before the varsity game.
Right.
The JV game went 4 overtimes.
Oh, jeez.
We had to fill 1 hour of time, and we just talked about anything we could think about, whether it was basketball or anything else, just to
They're
fill
going
that time.
stretch it.
We did it. I mean, somehow we got it done, and nobody tuned out for. I guess they wanted to hear the game. They stuck in with it. We explained what was going on and give them little updates on the JV game, which we didn't know much about the players and all. But the reason I mentioned that and how in broadcasting, when you do a live broadcast, you don't know what's going to happen. Last night, we're recording this again, as I mentioned, on the 5th of September, on September 4th. That was the first NFL game. So it was on a Thursday now. NBC had the rights to the game. And it was the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia. Usually the Super Bowl winner gets the home game to start the season. Played the game in Philadelphia. They played the Dallas Cowboys. I think it was right around the end of the third quarter, a thunderstorm came through. And you know what happens in the rules they have today. And there are good reasons for this
Yep.
rule. You don't want people hit by lightning. And when there's a lightning storm within a certain, I said, circumference or a distance from whatever stadium you're in, you have to suspend the game. It's true in
Right.
pro football. It's true in college and even high school. I was at a high school football game where we had to. It was really kind of weird. We all were trying to find places to shelter in our cars. They gave us some areas at the school. They opened up real quickly, but it was kind of crowded. So last night I didn't watch the game live. Once they had that delay, I said, "Oh, it's going to be while I went to bed." So I was checking. I checked it this morning on my DVR. They were recording. NBC had to fill 1 hour of time that they had not planned. So, you got Mike Tirico and Collinsworth in the booth, and they just pretty much exhausted everything. Well, they usually have a studio show, but they bring the studio show to the stadium for the first game. So they got like Tony Dungy and other people, who are the commentators and the anchors who do that. Well, they were all set up by the field. Okay, they couldn't sit by the field where they had
Right.
everything set up. So they couldn't just go on. So they had to, it looked like they were using a handheld camera. For people who don't know, usually at a network level, you've got a stationary camera all set up and lighting and everything. They had to go underneath the stadium and find a place where they could go on live they were trying to fill the time and they weren't having an easy job of it because they had no preparation. When you go on network TV, you spend a lot of time preparing what you're going to talk about. They had prepared nothing and just had to talk about the game that they'd seen and what was just anything they could think about. So I had to feel sorry. I was just thinking of that TV director trying to figure out what he was going to do next when the booth was running out of anything to say. And then, they were trying to configure what's usually the studio crew someplace where they could set up where they wouldn't be in the line of fire for lightning. I thought that was really something. Even though we were on the local radio level, we dealt with the same thing. A whole group of people at the network level, as a whole team of people working, they had to scramble to figure out what to do. So, and this
Yeah.
happened.
And of course, I'm sitting there talking to Kim and going, back in my day, you didn't stop the game for lightning. And if you're sitting on metal bench seats, you're taking your chances if you're still sitting there. But actually, I thought that I really liked that all, from high school on up, if there is a chance of lightning, those types of storms, that they do suspend the games, because back then they didn't. But now it's just the prudent thing to do. That was a wild, wild game. From the fullback getting injured on the kickoff, which was just devastating. I'm not an Eagles fan. Go Colts. But to see anybody be out in the first play of the year, and then the stupidity of spitting on the opposing team's quarterback with the referee standing right there, and you've got cameras on you. It's like, I can't even, Nick Sirianni must have just freaked out afterwards on him and going, how can you be this dumb? I mean, it was nuts.
I was telling my wife Jane about that this morning. I did watch that live when it was happening. It's like, oh my goodness, the coaches are going to his teammates are going to string him up. This was not just some guy that works only special teams. He was a key defensive lineman, and it was pretty clear Dallas was running the ball in ways they would not have been able to do had this guy been in the game. So, and the thing is, if you spit on another player, that's not like just a 15-yard penalty. That's automatic ejection. And so you're right. It happened on camera, which is hard to pick up on a TV camera. You could still.
Yeah, but the camera work was so good. You could see it flying from his face onto Dak Prescott. And back in the day, and again, what happens in the pile in the line, and this guy's a lineman. Dude, if you want to do something like that, you have plenty of opportunities. You don't need to do it right there out in the open. Take a look at somebody like Conrad Dobler, who was a guard for the old St. Louis Cardinals football team, who was labeled many years the dirtiest player in the NFL. That guy would spit bite, anything at all, because he'd do it in the pile where you couldn't catch it.
Yeah, he was smart about it. And in those days, they didn't have as many cameras and high
Right,
definition.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
he was like every didn't he get that designation as the dirtiest player in the NFL every year that he played? I think he did.
Darn near. And he was a great guard. I mean, the guy could play offensive line. He was a great guard, but man, he would, he's one of those that when you're in a pile with him, you better guard everything, including, making sure that your nether regions are covered, because he would grab and try and rip those around.
Well, we won't talk about nether regions, but we will talk about the final comment because our time's about up, Duncan. Any final thought before we wrap this up?
Again, I just want, we just came back from time on the lake. We're getting ready to take another short couple of day trip. My thing is, whatever gives you pleasure, whatever makes you relax, whatever you can do to de-stress your life, be it small things or large, please try and take advantage of it. Even if it doesn't cost you any money, sitting down, reading a book, watching a rerun of a favorite TV show, taking a walk in a park, or just sitting in a park, whatever you can do to de-stress your life. I'm a huge advocate for that. Like I said, my daughter Madison, being a mental health counselor, is also a huge proponent of this, because you need to de-stress. We're so tense anymore over everything that, it's tough to relax yourself. And everybody, I think, needs to do that as much as they can when they can.
Well, Duncan, at least you clarified your view last time that retired people need vacations too. So,
darn tootin'.
With that in mind, thank you so much, Duncan. If all goes well, we'll be back next week. We thank you for being with us on Lannan and Giles Unscripted. We have one ask for you as the audience. Like and subscribe to this podcast. We appreciate it. Duncan and Larry will be back soon with another episode. In the meantime, this is Unscripted.